long have you known Johnnie Colemon?
Oh, I've known her better than 10 years. And we have exchanged pulpits, my coming to speak here at her church in Chicago, and she coming to speak at my church in New York.
So you don't resent if we call her Chicago's Reverend Ike?
No, I don't resent that. That's a compliment to me.
Okay. Now, you were quoted as saying some time ago, quote, "I stopped serving the God who glorified my afflictions." What happened? And who was that God that glorified afflictions? And what is the God that you are seeking?
All right, some people have the idea that poverty and sickness glorify God. And this is some people's objection to prosperity, or perhaps to having good health. And so they say, well, my affliction is to the glory of God, my poverty is to the glory of God. But I take the text from the Bible, from 3 John, the 2nd chapter, which says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in health even as your soul prospers," to show that it is...
Who says that?
This is from the Bible. This is God speaking in the Bible. Beloved, notice, beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in health even as your soul prospers.
And yet, if you were to quote other parts of the Bible, I mean, if we were to get out the New Testament,
yes,
could we not find...
Paul.
We could find all kinds of segments that give the indication that if you are poor, humble, meek, you are you may be on hell on earth, but you're in good shape with your afterlife. And if you're rich and prosperous, you got to get through this this eye of the needle.
People quote the Apostle Paul from the Bible, the scripture that says that the love of money is the root of all evil. Of course, I have retransliterated that to say it is the lack of money that is the root of all evil. But you see, you have to understand, it's all right to have money, but never let money have you. And so I teach my people to say, money is my servant. I am not the servant of money. And that's the balance that one has to have. But it is God's will for us to be in health and for us to prosper. I mean, after all, if we don't have money, how can we give to good causes? How can we build hospitals for the healing of the sick? How can we fund research programs for the healing of cancer and other maladies in society? How can we help those, quote unquote, that are less fortunate?
But again, it creates a serious problem for those who want to believe and who say, well, now the Reverend Ike has just made a very convincing presentation, and yet I've been told all these years that I should really listen to Paul. And it's this matter of, look, you can read into the Bible anything you want. Is that what you finally decided? This is a great big book. I'm going to read into it what makes sense to me.
Well, yes, you know, I've said this, and it's a very controversial way of putting it, but I'll state it anyway. I stopped as I was preaching, and I said to the people, I said, people, I said, you know, the Bible doesn't mean anything except what a person makes it mean. And you see, each person interprets the scripture, our life for that matter, through the color of his own consciousness. And so those who are bent on poverty can go through the Bible and find all of the poverty scriptures. And then there's this big issue among the fundamentalists. They ask, for example, do you believe that the Bible is the infallible Word of God? And of course, my answer is, I have no problem with the validity of the Bible. I believe in the Bible, but I don't believe in everybody's interpretation. And so you can go into
So you believe in the Bible that you believe in.
I take the rich part of the Bible. I take that part where God's will is expressed in 3 John, the 2nd chapter for the Bible thumpers, where it says, Beloved, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in health even as your soul prospers. The Bible also says that the Lord delights in the prosperity of his servants. It's all right for us to have things as long as things don't have us.
Reverend Ike, did you come to that understanding? At what point in your life did you come to that understanding?
All right, well, first of all, let me go back, because, you know, Reverend Ike was not born with the 20-some-odd Rolls Royces and with the diamonds and with all of the flamboyance.
Do you have 20-some Rolls Royces?
Well, let's say that at one particular time I had the largest private collection of classic Rolls Royces in the United States, and we have some left.
You have some left. You don't have a spare one on you, do you?
Enough to ride in every day a different one, and yet have some left for the holidays.
Okay.
But anyway, I was not born in this particular circumstance. I was born in South Carolina. from a broken home where my father, who was wealthy, would not support me because he said it would help my mother. And since she left him, he wanted to be sure that he didn't help her. My mother taught school, 7 grades in one room, $65 a month. She and I walked to school, 4 miles to school every day, 4 miles back. People passed in their big cars, splashed mud on us. Busing was not the issue. They rode the bus and left the walking to us in those days. When I went to high school, I remember when lunch was 7 cents a day. And I remember the days I didn't have the 7 cents to buy lunch at school. And I remember when I would press my nose to the screens of the lunchroom and smell and see the delicious aromas coming out, but didn't have 7 cents to get in. Then I remembered, and I'm telling you all of this to show you what happened and where the change in me took place. Then I remembered that in my fundamentalist religious upbringing, Baptist mainly at that point, I would always hear the minister quoting, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want."
Every Sunday.
Yes. And there with my nose pressed against the lunchroom screen, smelling the aromas of food, seeing the other kids eating, and not having 7 cents to get in. And something says to me, what is this business about the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want? And that scripture haunted me until one day I said to myself, because you see, I started preaching at 14. And at 16, I pastored the church that I was in when I graduated from high school. At 16, I was pastor of the local community church. But anyway, I finally said, listen, I'm going to prove that scripture, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I'm going to demonstrate it in my life, or I'm going to shuck the whole thing.
So that really was the beginning
That was the
of
beginning.
your philosophy.
Yes. But now the real change took place when I began to minister to people, and people came to me for prayer for one thing more than anything else, the financial problem, the material needs problem. And I remember I got this letter from this lady that said, "Dear Reverend Ike, my husband has been laid off from work. We have 7 children." And it was almost as if I got angry at want, lack, and limitation itself. And so I stopped and I prayed a prayer of command to God. Because in the Bible, God does say, "Command you me." And I said, "God, you are going to feed these children." And I sat and wrote the lady a quick letter. And I said, "Lady, God is going to feed those children." A week or so later, she came and knelt at the altar at a service I was conducting. And I knelt in front of her. And she whispered in my ear. And she said, "Reverend, a miracle has happened. We got an unexpected check of over $2,000. It shows us that the Lord is providing, and I believe that God is going to continue to provide." And I began to preach to people, God will provide. God will show you how to get that job. God will show you how to use your own talents to start your own business so that you can give other people's jobs instead of waiting for people to give you jobs. And at our church in New York, we have the Business of Living Institute, where we help people to identify their talents and to go out and start businesses based on their talent. And a lot of people, instead of looking for jobs, they're starting their own businesses and giving other people's jobs.
So you're saying for those of us who are spiritually pious and who say, now you're being a materialist, you're saying, in effect, look, Sonny, you haven't dealt with really poor people. And if you don't feed people and clothe people to start off, you can't even have a dialogue.
Well,
is that in essence what
people,
your philosophy is?
That's
You've got
only
to
a
have
part of it.
self-respect from some material presence?
Yes, you must have. But let's remember that the spiritual part and the material part are not two separate poles. You see, some people...
They're a part of a balancing act you
Yes,
described
yes,
earlier.
yes.
But then that raises the question, how can 20-some Rolls Royces be a part of any balancing act when there are any people on this earth who need food?
Well, first of all, my having 20-some Rolls Royces takes nothing from anybody else. That's another principle you have to understand about prosperity. My having abundance doesn't take anything from anybody else. Well, first of all, if I'm a teacher of prosperity, I have no right to teach the poor or anybody else to be prosperous unless I'm prospering myself.
And yet there's
As
this
we
thing you
said-
called balance.
But
And it would
as
seem
we
to me that
said-
maybe one Rolls Royce instead of 20 would represent the balance, and indeed you can take the money.
But-
if you sell all of those cars, you can provide that as a trust fund which will serve the needs of poor people.
Well, may I remind you that we are in the business, the Rolls Royces that we have take nothing away from our programs that we have in this ministry of teaching people self-reliance, of teaching people to get into their own business and to actually create jobs for the jobless.
I don't
We're
mean to
busy
focus
doing
on it,
that.
but forgive me for pursuing the point. What it doesn't teach, it seems to me, which was the very, seems to me, theme that you opened this program with, it doesn't teach and it doesn't set an example for balance. It doesn't seem to be balanced prosperity.
Well, I have no right to teach prosperity unless I'm prosperous myself.
But isn't prosperity to be measured in some balance? And isn't 20 Rolls Royces, as an example?
Maybe for you, but not for me.
But isn't it excessive?
That's subjective.
Do you really need them?
And let me tell you also, it's good investment. Some of those Rolls Royces I bought 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Why, I have one I'm thinking of now that was bought back in the early 70s for $20,000.
No.
And on the collector's market today, it's worth over $100,000.
But have you arrived at a comfortable personal ethic of balance versus excessive holdings?
Well, you see, what you may call excessive is not excessive to me. And then
How would you define it? How would you define the balance?
And let me explain to you a psychological thing about this. And I say this at my prosperity meetings and teachings. I believe that the reason I collect all of these beautiful cars is a compensation for those days when I walked 4 miles to school and 4 miles back and had the mud splashed on me as I and my mother trudged to school and back. And in those particular days, I would imaginarily drive my big car, and I would make the motor sounds and shift the gears, woo, doo, 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 and I would tell my mother, I'm driving a big, fine car. And there, you know, the laws of life are really psychological. Now, there's a Christian statement that is used, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. Well, I have my own interpretation to that, which means that whatever idea you lift up in your mind, you will draw the corresponding manifestations to you. So I lifted up in my childhood when I had nothing, when I was walking in the dirt and in the mud to school, the idea of having a big, fine car. And so I magnetized myself for all of these cars. And that is one of the psychological laws of life that I teach people.
But is it one of the
Whatever
other
good you
psychological...
desire, think about it.
But is one of the
Feel
other
it, see it.
psychological points that you can come to, because you've already, it seems to me, astutely acknowledged that there's compensation going on here. I once asked Howard Cosell why he seemed so insecure about himself, because he said, I really came out of poverty, and he said it wasn't until very recently that I was secure enough to think that if I got fired, I'd have enough money. Now, do you try, in your own personal life, do you look for the day when you won't need to compensate anymore and you can be an example of a balanced material life?
I am balanced because I don't trust in any of these things, and I always say, these things serve me, and I don't serve these things. And Jesus said, seek you first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. So first of all, we must be secure within our spiritual being, and prosper within ourselves, within our minds, and be happy within ourselves, and generous and loving within ourselves.
And you feel that?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm a very giving person. And as I say, we are in programs where we motivate millions of people the world over, because I have a large mail ministry. There are months when I correspond with over 6 million people all over the United States and in different parts of the world. And every month we send out to people what we call success ideas, which are motivational tools which help people to believe in themselves, to believe in the possibilities which God has put within them, which help people to identify their talents so that they can go out and be self-supporting, productive members of society.